Hi all, this is the third video of building a quiz application with React.js and ASP.NET Core Web API. If you haven't watched the previous videos, please watch that first. I have given the previous videos link in video description and inside the first comment of this video. So first of all, we'll be making a post request to the Web API with the question IDs, and from the Web API we have to return the questions along with the correct answers. For that, inside this question controller here, I will customize this post web API method here. So into this web API method, we'll be passing an array of integers. So I will name this parameter as question IDs. Let's rename this method as retrieve answers. And also I want to change the route for this web method here. So let's use this attribute route get answers. So in order to make a request to this web API method here, the corresponding URI will be like this: API/question, then get answers. Now let me get rid of everything inside the web API here. We'll be retrieving answers into this variable answers here, and we'll be returning the same at the end. Now how can we retrieve the questions for the given IDs here? So first of all, here we have the avoid keyword. Now we could do this context dot questions contain the collection of questions inside the DB. Now let's filter the records based on their question ID X such that we will select the question if the ID of this question is present inside the array. For that, we can make use of this array method contain, and let's pass the question ID here. So that will return the questions that we are looking for. Now let's select the column properties as we have done before. So let me copy this from the getWeb method. We already used this X here for this lambda expression here. Just to avoid the confusion, I will rename this parameter as Y. Now along with these properties, we need the answer also. So answer is equal to Y.answer. Okay, finally, let's convert this to a list. So we can call this function to list async. So here we have selected the questions with the IDs inside this array here, and here we have selected the properties as we have done before, including the answer. Now let's build this project. Let's make the post request directly from this result component here. We have to make the post request once the component is completely loaded. So let's use this useEffect hook. Before making the request, first of all, we have to create the array of question IDs for passing to this parameter here. So here we go. Let's import the context. Context.selected options contains the question ID and selected options. We only need the question ID, so we can call this array method map. Now here we will just return the question ID. Inside this quiz component, we have saved the question ID here, and the same is retrieved with this map method here. Now let's make the API request. So here we have the API function create API endpoint. Let's call that here. We already have an endpoint for question, but this time it's different. I will create new property get answers. So question / get answers. Now let's pass the same here endpoints dot get answers. Let's call this method post. The data that we want to post can be passed to this function here. So here is the collection of IDs. Now here we have the callback function for both success and error. Inside the success response, for now, let's print the data retrieved from the server. So response.data contains the data that we have returned from the API. Reload and let's check the dev console. Surprisingly, we got 8 answers instead of 5. So there is some bug. Let me check that and I will be back in a minute. Finally, I found the reason. We had a typo inside this quiz component here. Instead of this, we have to provide selected options. Save this. Reload this. Now let's select answers randomly. Now let's check the dev console to see the return response from the server API. Boom. So here we have the 5 questions that we have just attended and their proper answers. Now we have to merge this array with the array that we have saved inside our local storage or the context API here. Inside that we have the selected options index that we have chosen during the quiz program. Once we merge these two arrays, we can calculate the score out of 5. So first of all, we'll create a state property score. And here we have the array to store the merged result. Now let's do the merging inside this callback here. Actually, here we are going to merge the answers and questions received from the response into the selected options array inside the context here. And thereby we can preserve the order of questions that we have just attended. So here we go. Context dot selected options contains those attended questions with the selected option index. Now from this array we want to call this map method. Let me split this into multiple lines. Each of the item inside the array is represented with x. Now from this map method we are returning an object by combining the properties from both of the arrays. First of all, let's destructure the properties from this array. Now here we have to find the question from the response for the current question ID. So inside this response data, we have the collection or array of questions. From that, we can call this method find. And here we have the condition y dot question ID is equal to x dot question ID. So this will return the question for the current question ID here. Now we want to merge the properties from this record. Let's simplify the syntax here. We don't need this return keyword. Let's wrap this object with a pair of parentheses like this. So inside this array, we have merged both the answer and the selected options. Now we can easily find this code. So first of all, I will update this array to this question answer object here. Now I will define a separate function to calculate this score. This function accepts the array of question answers, and let's calculate the score inside this function. Now let me call the function here. For calculating this score, I will be using the array method reduce. We have already discussed this JavaScript array method in great depth in one of my JavaScript tutorial. I have given the link in video description and inside the iCard top right corner. You can watch that if you find reduce method a little difficult to understand. So here we have the callback function with accumulator and current value. In order to initialize this accumulator, I will pass 0 here. Now here we can do this. We will compare the correct answer with the selected option. So if they match each other, we will return the incremented accumulator, else the existing accumulator will be returned. So in brief, this reduce method will iterate through each of the records inside this array here, and these two properties answer and selected will be compared. If they match each other, this accumulator get incremented. Initially the accumulator will be having 0, and based on the condition here from each iteration the accumulator get incremented, and finally this reduce returns number of questions where we have answered correctly. So I will save that into this temp variable here. Now let's update the scope property. Now I'll be showing this code inside the component using Material UI card component. So here we have the card documentation, and for showing this code I have copied this card UI controls here. I don't want to extend this tutorial furthermore, so here's my customized card. Content will be shown on the first half, and then we will be having an image, and this image is already saved or copied into this public folder here. So this is the image that I have copied, and I'll be showing along with the card result here. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Now we want to show this score here. Now first of all, we will show this text or heading congratulations, and then here we have the title saying your score, and here we have shown the score within this typography. Score will be the inside the state object score, so that's what I have shown inside this typography. So this will be similar to a span component in HTML. So we got this score out of 5. Now finally we have to show the time taken for this quiz program. For that I will be adding a new typography component here like this. Here we have called the helper method get format. Into that we have passed the time taken from the context API. So here it is. Something went wrong. Let's check that. Sorry, here we have made a major mistake. Instead of this curly brackets, we have to use square brackets. So here it is. Now just beneath this code, we need 2 buttons for submitting this code to the API and 1 button to restart this quiz program. So I will add those 2 buttons just below this time taken heading. So here we have the button for submitting this code that we have received, and here we have the button to restart the program. Now let's implement the click event for this retry button with this function restart. First of all, we want to reset the context API data like we have done inside this quiz component did mount here. So let me copy this and pasting here. Now we want to navigate into this quiz component here. So first of all, we need a navigator object. So let me copy this and pasting here. Let's import this hook. Now we could do this navigate /quiz. Let's try the button here. Boom, that's it. Let's implement the click event for this submit button here. So during the submission, we have to update the current participant score and the time taken for this quiz program. So let's create an update web method inside this participant controller here. So here we have the put web API method. Now into this web API method, we will be passing only these properties: question ID, score, and time taken. Rest of the properties like email, name is not saved inside the context API, so it's not possible to pass them, and it's not necessary to pass them here. So I'll be creating a separate class to receive the data from the client side. So here's the class participant result with these properties: participant ID, score, and time taken. Now this model will be used for receiving the data inside this method here. So participant result, I'll rename this parameter as underscore participant result. Now we will compare the ID that we have passed with the ID inside this object underscore participant result. So the value inside this ID parameter, it will be passed along with the URI, and the ID inside this model property must be matched. If not, a bad request will be returned. Now we have to find the participant record with the given ID here. So first of all, we can call this find function from the participant DB set property. So this will find the participant record with the given ID here. Now we have to update the participant score and the time taken for the quiz program like this. And here we have set this participant state as modified. And with this save changes method here, it will update the new values provided here. Rest of the value will be as it is since we have retrieved with the find method here. Only these two properties are getting updated. Now here we have the catch block to handle concurrency exception, and finally everything when successful, we won't return anything. Now in order to reflect these new changes, let's build this project again. After successful build, back to the React application here. Let's add a click event to this submit button here. Now let's define this function. In order to make the pull request, we can make use of the API function here. Let's import. Into the function, we have to pass the corresponding endpoint which is already there. In order to make the pull request to the web API method, we have to make the request to this URL API/participant then the ID. So we could do this endpoints dot participant. Now to make the put request, there is a function called put inside this function here. To this function, we have to pass the ID and the object with the updated values. So here we have the participant ID. Now we have to pass the object with updated values along with the participant ID, then score, then time taken for this quiz program. Now here we have the callback for success and error response. Now inside this success callback here, I just want to print the response to check whether this update operation went successful or not. Reload this, submit the score. Boom, that's it. We got the response with the status 204 no content, meaning update operation went successful. Now after this successful operation, I just want to show a notification saying operation went successful. For that, we can make use of this material UI component alert. So here we have the alert component. Inside that, we will show this submitted successfully. And for customizing this component, I will add this SX property like this. Now, if you check the component, you could always see this alert component here. We only want to show this after this successful submit operation here. For that, I'm going to create a new state property, show alert. And let's initialize that with the boolean value false. Now, after this successful submit operation, I will set the corresponding property here. We only want to show the alert for a few seconds. So we can do this. We can call this function set timeout. This callback will be called after 3 or 4 seconds. So we can pass the seconds in milliseconds here. Inside this, we will reset this property here. Now based on this state property, we need to set the visibility of this alert component here. So we'll update this visibility property based on the value like this. Okay, so if this property is true, we will set the visibility as visible, otherwise hidden. Initially the alert component is hidden. Now let's try to submit this code again. Boom, that's it. Now finally we need to show the questions with their correct answers. Before that, I want to highlight this score here. For that, inside this result component, I will be importing this color green from Material UI colors. Now let's pass the same inside this score typography here. We could do this color is equal to green with this shade 500. That's it. Now let's show the questions with their correct answers. For that, I'm going to create a new component, answer. Now we'll show this answer component inside this result component here, answer. Into this component, we need to pass the merged question answer array. For that, I will be using this property question answers. We can pass the state object question answers here. Now let's wrap everything inside this component with the React fragment. Now let's destructure the array that we have passed inside this answer component here. So here it is. Now for displaying question answers, I'll be using the Material UI component Accordion. It's a really useful component and it's perfectly appropriate inside this quiz application for showing the correct answers. The integration of this component is pretty simple. You can go through this documentation here. So first of all, I will wrap everything with this box component with some custom CSS. Now we will map through this question answer array like this. Okay, for each question we have, we'll be showing an accordion component here. For this accordion component, there is two parts. First of all, the header part, which is the summary, and the content. Inside this documentation, this is the header part or summary, and here we have the accordion details. So inside this summary, we'll be showing the question in words property inside this typography title here. Now inside this accordion details, we'll be showing the image if there is an image for this question. We have already discussed these components already in previous quiz components, so I'm not going to explain them. You already know it. Now here we have to show the options of this question like we have done in the previous quiz component like this. Exactly like we have done in previous component. Now let's save this and back to the application here. Boom, that's it. So here we have the accordion. Now inside this accordion, I only want to open one accordion at a time. To do so, we need a state object here called expanded. Now inside this property, we'll be saving the currently open accordion index. So first of all, we have to handle this onChange event. So here we have the function handle change. Into that, we'll pass this accordion index. So here's the function handle change. For this function, we have the single parameter panel, which is actually the index of the accordion. Now inside this function, this nested function will be invoked. It has two default parameters for this onChange event. First of all, the event itself, and here we have the property indicating whether this accordion component is already opened or not. Now inside this function, we just need to set this expanded property here. So if it is already expanded, that means if we click on an accordion, it will get open and this handle event change will be invoked. So this is expanded property will be true. In that case, the current accordion index will be saved to this state property here, otherwise false. Now based on this property, we can conditionally apply whether this accordion is opened or not. For that, we can do this. Here we have the expanded property of the component accordion. If the ID inside this expanded state property is equal to the current index j, this property will set as true and thereby this accordion will be opened. Now if we go back to the component here, now this time we can only open one accordion at a time. See? Now we need an expanded icon like this here. You can search for icons inside the Material UI like this. Icons page or documentation is here. Now if you go to this link here, you can see all of the Material UI icons. You can select the icon, then copy this import statement here. For this accordion here, I have imported this icon here. expanded circle down icon. Now we can pass this icon to this component accordion summary like this. Sorry, I forgot to mention this. Before using Material UI icons, we have to install this package here. Let's open a terminal. Let's execute the command here. Installation of the package will take some time, so please be patient. After all, let's reload the application. Now I want to show these icons in green and red color based on whether the participant answered the question correctly or not. For that, I will be adding this SX property here. And here we can set the color property. If the selected option index is similar to the answer, we will show this green color, otherwise we will show the red color. Now make sure to import these two colors, green and red, here. Boom, that's it. I want to show this icon detail here in gray color. For that, along with these two colors, green and red, let's import gray and let's set the color for this details component here. Now inside these options, I want to mark the correct answer in green color and the wrong option in red color. That can be done for this typography component here. We will call this function mark correct or not. Into this function, we'll be passing the question object and this option index. And this function will be returning an object, and that returned object will be destructured here. Now let's define this function mark correct or not. So here we have the function with those two passed parameters, question answer object and the option index. Now here we have the if clause. First of all, I'll be creating an array with those two indices. So here we have the correct option answer index, and here we have the selected option index. We only want to mark the current option as correct or not if the index is either the selected index here or the correct answer index. So we can call the array method includes with the current option index. Now inside this if clause, we'll be returning an object with the SX property. That's what we use to customize Material UI components, and we will set this property with this object containing this property color. Inside that, we will conditionally apply the colors. If the current option is the correct answer, then we will return the green color, otherwise we will return the red color. Now let me save this and back to the application. Boom, that's it. Which of the following is not operating system? Correct answer is CSS, and the selected option is Unix, which is wrong answer. And here we have the question that participant answered correctly. Now finally, there is one more small topic to be discussed. Let's log out from this application. I want to make these two routes, which are quiz route and result route, as protected, meaning without logging into this application, if user or the participant directly enter the quiz component URL here, we have to prevent the user from accessing this quiz component without the actual login operation. This time the actual participant ID will be 0, so everything will mess up at the end of the result. So let's look how to make these two routes as protected. It's very simple. We just need to create a component like this, authenticate. Now we just need to wrap these two routes, result and quiz, with the newly created component authenticate. So here is the route, and we need to set the element as the new component authenticate. Now here we have the corresponding clause tag. Now back to the component authenticate. Now in order to check whether a user is authenticated or not, we can make use of the context API property participant ID. So first of all, I will destructure the context here. Now we just need to do this context dot participant ID can be compared with 0. If it is equal to 0, we could say the participant is not logged in. In that case, we have to redirect the user to the login component. For that, we can make use of this navigate component from router. Now with this to property, we can specify the targeted route where we want to redirect the unauthenticated participants. So it will be the default route, which is login form. And here we have the else part, meaning there is a participant ID inside the context. In that case, everything should happen as per the route. For that, we can just return this outlet component like this. Sorry, here we have a typo. Let's save this, back to the application. Currently we are not authenticated or logged in. Now let's try to access this quiz route here. That's it. The context participant ID is 0 and thereby we redirected to the login component. Now let's try after login operation. It's working perfectly fine. That's it guys. Hope you found this tutorial helpful. You can download or clone this project from the GitHub repository link given in video description. For more React and .NET Core API tutorials like this, please consider subscribing to this channel CodAffection if you haven't yet. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can also benefit from this. See you in next video.